Hi, welcome to the Costa Tropical in Spain, where I'll be taking a series of images along the coastline. I will be providing information as to how I took each of the images and also the details of the process of thinking about why I was taking each of those images. Whilst walking along the coastline, I was interested in taking shots that weren't normal of the Spanish coast. And I came across this bay and I noticed the waves lapping against the rock in the centre of the bay. Observing the colour of the water and the way that the waves lapped around the rocks, I concluded that this was ideal for a long exposure image. So I set up my tripod on the rocks that you can see protruding and captured this image. I used an ND1000 filter to achieve an exposure time of 200 seconds. This really allowed it to pick out the colour of the sea and create that milky effect of a long exposure. And when on location, it's really critical to observe the smaller details. Here we find a series of very small cairns that were built by the locals within the cove, making ideal subjects for both colour and black and white. I observed these after just sitting, looking at the scene for around 15 to 20 minutes, just observing the location to make sure that I was capturing the right images. And this demonstrates the need to observe your surroundings, not just for the foreground, but also for the background. And on this stretch of coast, I noticed the ebb and flow of the waves around this rock and this very, very small inlet were creating leading lines. I felt this would give us a great foreground lead-in to the image. And we can see that the leading lines as the water flows out creates lead-ins to the roughness of the sea beyond. And an exposure of half a second gives us movement in the water flow, but also creates action within the waves crashing against the rocks too. It's important too to observe things that go beyond the norm. At the top we see a Moorish castle, an ancient stronghold from about the 13th, 14th century. And below we see a more modern industrial decay. This contrast between the old and the new along the Spanish coast is rife and well worth observing beyond just the beach scenes that we so often see. This contrast between old and new cries out to be shot in black and white. I then moved further down the coast to a larger bay with a Moorish tower overlooking the bay. A number of features including rocks which were creating great lines as the waves rolled over them and rolled out again. This bay is extremely popular during the summer months, but the rest of the year is deserted. And here we have our first image. We can clearly see the tower on the cliff tops. The leading lines lead us into the rock in the foreground, which has plenty of space around it to differentiate it from the background. And this is framed nicely at the top by the detail in the moody clouds. And in this one, I really wanted to focus on not just the leading lines in the foreground rock, but also the detail in the sky. It adds a real mood and atmosphere to this image. Zooming in here on the detail, it's worth noting that each of these had an exposure time of around half a second just to capture the leading lines as the water retreated. This was the first of a series of videos I'll be making from Spain, so please subscribe to see future ones and also check out the rest of the videos on my channel. I hope you found this useful and thank you very much for your time spent watching this video.